The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and that is not me on the screen. That's a recording.
This is the home for Autism Live.
I'm like, I'm not wearing that shirt. I know I'm not wearing that shirt.
Autism and related disorders. And we're really excited to be here.
There we are. I was like, there we are. I'm live, but I'm not live. I'm not wearing that shirt. So welcome. Welcome, all of you. That was the strangest, oddest, most weird thing in the world. I was talking, and I saw myself talking, and I was saying pretty much the same thing, but I was like, that is not me. I am not wearing that shirt. Okay, that was weird. But good morning and welcome. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're coming to you live right now from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. So I don't know what that was about, but it's all good. It's Wednesday, and we're excited to be here with you. I'm going to tell you, you can see over my shoulder that this morning we have the fabulous Evelyn Kung. She's the clinical director for CARD. She's going to be with us in just a minute answering your questions. But before that, I want to remind you that this entire show is meant to be interactive. We want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your questions, your feelings, your concerns, all of that. Traven is going to show you, as long as we don't have gremlins that come along, how to connect with the show. And there's lots of different ways, you guys. You can join us on our homepage, which is autism-live.com, and there is a chat that you just click on at the bottom of the page. It's like a little red dot that says chat. You click on that, it opens up a box, and you can type away in there and hit enter, and it shows up here on my screen. And in that way, you can be talking with me, but better than that, you can talk with the experts that we have on the show. But there are many other things that you can do on that website. We hope that you'll tootle around and push all of the buttons. In just a couple of days, we're going to be debuting our brand new toy guide for 2019, and I'm very excited and proud of that. It's a whole list of toys that are interactive and super and fabulous that we and a bunch of kiddos and a bunch of parents and a bunch of therapists voted on and picked our favorites. So that's coming out on November 1st, which is not that far away. So check that out. It's at the top of the page. It says Toy Guide. Right now you can look at the one from last year to get some ideas because it will go away in just a couple of days. So I don't know about you, but it's just never too early to holiday shop, right? But there are other ways that you can connect with us, and Traven has been showing those to you. Please participate in whatever way works for you. We love to hear from you on our Facebook and on our YouTube, on Twitter, on Periscope. We're on Instagram now. I don't even know how that works, but we're on Instagram. Anyway, whatever works for you, because this is about getting information and inspiration to you. We do our show for the larger autism community. That means, of course, individuals who are on the autism spectrum, of course, but also all of the people who love them, whether it's parents, spouses, brothers, sisters, cousins, teachers, therapists, all the people who want to support individuals who are on the autism spectrum. That's what this show is for, to help all of us to get to the place that we want to get to, that respect and opportunity for people who are on the autism spectrum. That's what we're about here. So I'm glad that you're here with us, even though it's somehow a wonky day. It's just been a wonky couple of days, I think. So in any case, Evelyn Kung is here. I'm going to go ahead and introduce her. Hello.
Hello.
So thrilled that you're here.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm thrilled that you said yes. And a lot of times on Wednesdays, we have Dr. Doreen, and we have a segment called Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Grant-Bichet joins us. But when she cannot, our first go-to is that we ask Evelyn Kung if she can join us. She's the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And when she can join us, that's a great day, right?
It's fun. Thank you.
We really enjoy having you here. We ask her questions that you guys have written in to us, And we like to tell you at the start of this that there is no expert in any field who could give individual specific advice in this format. That would be a disservice to the individual, right? You want to have somebody who has eyes on the situation and can look at it from several different vantage points. So keep in mind that when you write in and ask questions, that be as specific as you can be, but Evelyn's going to give you information that is of a general nature.
Yes.
For you to take back to your expert and say, more questions, ask more questions now that you'll have more knowledge.
Okay.
So we really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Thank you for inviting
with
me.
us. So I want to start with a question that's a little bit interesting, and we're going to get your opinion on it.
Oh, my opinion.
What is your opinion on children's books for young autistic children? I find myself wondering if they might be better served by having more reality-based, engaging books rather than the typical cute but more pretend type books. And that's coming to us from Judy. So Judy, hello, and welcome to Autism Live. What do you, and you know I'm going to have an opinion, but I'm dying to hear yours. What's your opinion?
I always go back to the idea that for a neurotypical child, every moment is a learning moment. And for our kids with autism, that is not always true. So, well, you know, one of the reasons we do a 40-hour intensive ABA program is to just give them as much learning time as possible in the way that they actually learn. So whenever I look at a child or anything they're interacting, for our kids on the spectrum, I want every opportunity to be a learning opportunity. You know, and a lot of times with books, there's a lot of cute pretend ones, but I always look and say, do they even understand what these drawings are? Do they see it? Is this really like something they know? And some kids get some things and some kids don't. So you know your child best on what they're going to understand. But I do want, a lot of times when I was a therapist, we used to always make books for the kids. Because then we would take the photo album pages and we would take pictures and just put it in, and then we would just we'd change up the script or the writing, the text that would go with it, and we would make up stories. But I always made them somewhat learning, like they either had to learn something to it, because if I'm going to be sitting down with you, I want you to be getting something out of it, just like you would with a neurotypical child. You want, you know, all your interactions to be somewhat positive and, you know, learning. And even though we don't go about life that way, it is what happens, you know. So I am more of the person who will go with the kid and I'm going to say, if I'm going to sit down and be reading with you, I want this to somehow be relevant to your life and to be relatable, for them to be able to look at the pictures and actually know what it is. Because I think there's too many times when we do show our kids drawings and everything, but they don't know what it is and they have to learn what it is. They're already spending so much time learning outside of, you know, within therapy, they're learning so much that I think if I'm going to teach you something, if I can make it playful and fun, let's make it real too. And, you know, let's make it something that you can use later on, whether it comes in a form of, you know, just more rule-bound, rule-governed, making sure all the words in the book are something they know. So they understand the meaning of words instead of having to learn something specifically for this scenario, but then it doesn't relate to any other part of life. So I'm very much like looking at the kid and saying, okay, what do you actually understand? And we can make this fun. But what do you actually understand? So I am on the more reality-based books.
There we go. There we go. And my point of view on it is that each kid is different, right? But that it's not that it's, to me, it's not unimportant what the book is about, but it's equally important to me as how the book is read to a child. Because in the beginning, you should be reading to your child as much as you can. And for some kids on the autism spectrum, that can be like next to impossible. I remember thinking, I don't know how to get him to sit still so that I can read to him, you know? And we had to make it super duper reinforcing for him to be able to sit still. But what ended up happening was we paired it with stuff that he absolutely loved. So he then learned that being read to was a deeply pleasurable thing, and then he wanted it all the time. But I see all the time that nobody is teaching parents how to read books to their children. You know, and I didn't know that because I'd been taught how to read books to a child, but by example. I just saw other people do it, and so it wasn't. I just assumed that everybody had picked that up, and people hadn't. But what I was taught was it has to be an interactive experience, and that you have to make the book come alive.
Yes.
And that you have to do the voices of the different characters, right? And that I particularly love the Usborne books because they make it super easy for a parent, because one of the things that I was taught was that you have to find something on each page that the child interacts with. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with the story, but that you say, where's the duck, which is what's in the Usborne books. Every single page, you read the page, it has beautiful illustrations, but there's a duck hidden somewhere on the page in the Usborne children's books. And so, you read the page and then you say, where is the duck? Now, in the beginning, you have to teach the child to scan and look for the duck, and you have to prompt, and they don't know what a duck is, and you say, there's the duck, right? But eventually, they get that, and it's where you turn the page and where's the duck, and it keeps them a little bit more focused on the book. It's like it's an opportunity for them to get that immediate reinforcement of, yes, there's the duck, instead of just having it be the book. But you can do that with any book. You don't have to have an Usborne book to do that. You open up the book and you're reading The Three Little Pigs, and you go, where's the wolf? And if they don't know, and you put their finger on it and you go, there's the wolf.
Yes.
What noise does the wolf make? That's not written in the book.
Yeah.
But that's when it gets fun, and it's you spending time, and it builds that social part of reading stories together. So, it can be a book that you created yourself, or it could be anybody's book. I mean, I think that there are some amazing children's books. We actually are recommending some of them in this year's toy guide. Jimmy Fallon, but I'm not saying anything. But wait till you see. But anyway, but I think that you can take almost any book and make it that interactive experience with your child if you're willing to play.
And in some ways, what I said connects to what you say, because you're like, find the duck, and they learn to find the duck. I'm saying, hey, let's put all the names of the things that you know outside and put it in a fun place where it's a completely different setting and context.
Yes.
And you'll see, I realized a long time ago, trying to get our kids to sit down and read was really hard. But once I started making sure they knew the names of everything,
then they wanted to.
They were okay sitting there because they knew what it was.
Yeah.
I think so many times we try to get the kids to sit down, but they don't know what any of the words mean.
Yeah.
And how hard would it be if we were doing this in another language and somebody was not explaining and just talking at us?
Oh.
I would just, after a while, I'd be zoning out and trying to escape too.
I feel like that with our IT people.
I'm learning that language.
I am not. And to the point where somebody said something to me, they said something yesterday, and I was like, I don't know what that is. And he was like, what do you mean that? He was asking me to spell the rest of somebody's name. And he said, is it this? And I was like, I don't know what that means. And he goes, no, I'm asking you to spell a name. But I was that convinced that I didn't know what they were saying that I...
That's hilarious.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
In any case, but I think the big takeaway here is read with your children.
Yeah, and connect with them.
Yes.
And they need to connect to something in it. And initially it seems very prompted and contrived, but that's okay.
It is.
Yeah, it's totally okay. And familiarity actually helps so many of our kids. That's why they like their routines. It's familiar.
Yeah.
So if you keep changing the book every day, maybe that's harder for your kid to sit there. But if you took the same book and just did it for a week, by the 5th day, your kid starts to recognize things, starts to see the routine in it, and they're much more likely to stay with it. And it's just familiarity, because familiarity for kids on the spectrum is comforting, routine.
And, and that's a really important point, because I think a lot of times as parents, we feel like we're not doing our job if we don't have a library full of books. But the truth of the matter is, when I think back on it, that we had way too many books than what we should have had, right? And so they just would make a mess from time to time. But when I would ask him to pick the books that he wanted, because Mom was going to do story time, there were 5 specific books that he would have me read. And when it was Dad's turn, there were 5 different books, because we had ways of Like there was there was a book called Wet Dog that my husband would read, and it was hilarious, and he always wanted Dad to read Wet Dog. He never asked me to read it. But the point is, you don't have to have a million books, but but they do like to hear the same books over and
Yeah,
over.
they
and over
do.
again.
They like, I mean, that whole like routine rigidity,
Yeah.
you know, in ASD, that's kind of in that diagnosis, you can use it to the positive.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. And by the way, there's no one who can read Go Dog Go like I do. So Dad could do Scary Skull Island, which was a pop-up book, and Wet Dog, but I have a seriously competitive Go Dog Go. I'm just saying.
I'm going to make her read this to me.
In any case, all right, we're going to take a short break, and then we are going to be back with more of your questions. You can be writing in right now on Facebook, YouTube, or on autism-live.com. Stick with us right back after these messages.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi, welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman. We're here doing allergy-free cooking, and I brought my sister with me today.
Jamie Davis, thanks for having me.
A lot of people are asking about an allergy-free breakfast, and breakfast can be full of crap. You know,
But it's full of crap
cereal.
and it's hard to do. We
Yeah.
don't have time in the morning. We're in a hurry.
We're going completely nut-free. The recipe is not.
Personality, we can't do
Yeah, I
anything
can't
about.
do anything about that. So we're going to start off first with, I'm using sorghum and brown rice flour. I find the texture good, and I've added some flaxseed meal. We talked about that last time, flaxseed meal for poop. Almost every one of our kids has a poop issue. What's next on the recipe is the quinoa flakes, baking powder, cinnamon, and the xanthan gum. It brings the glutinous texture back into the flour, and often what happens with these recipes is they can fall apart. This one holds up nicely. I like it. For the folks that are egg-free, we have a ton of egg replacers. One of those can be the arrowroot starch or bringing back some additional flaxseed. So there's a lot of options to go eggless, but we're going to go egg full in this one. For sweetener, I use the maple syrup. I stay away from refined sugar. What I'm adding now is the coconut milk, maple syrup, and a little bit of the coconut oil. And we're going to add in the raisins, craisins, and chocolate chips at the end. I find that chocolate chips can coax people to eat some really amazing things. When we started, Jeff had 42 food allergies, so we had to get creative in how we cooked. So nuts were a big, big issue. What I like now is that he can tolerate so many more things after start doing this diet. So let me show you how you can deal with this sticky stuff here. You get your fingers really wet and you can push it down. So my oven has been preheated. It's at 350 degrees. So we're gonna just throw this in. Like I said, I like it around 23 minutes, and the magic oven says, I'm done. Looks like, don't you love magic ovens? They're awesome. There we go, pops right out. The texture of these, and it's so pretty, it looks almost like a big chocolate chip cookie, but you actually made it healthy. But you can be my guinea pig. Tell me what you think.
That looks really good.
Doesn't it? So the textures and the colors in there are just beautiful. So the raisins are for you, the chocolate chips are for your kid.
I can't believe it's gluten-free.
I know, right? It doesn't taste like,
Crap.
We're wrapping up another cooking show. If you have feedback, you can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. We're, of course, on Facebook. You could go to facebook.com/autismlive. And, of course, Talkin' Now has thousands of recipes. Join me there, and we can cook some more later on. So thanks for joining us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here with the wonderful, the fabulous Evelyn Kung. She is the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and she's amazing. She's answering your questions in a general way. You can write into us right now on the live feature or on Facebook or YouTube. So I'm continuing on with a really interesting question because we're here. I may have mentioned this at the start of the show. This studio is in the headquarters, the world headquarters for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And so somebody is asking is what are the autism related, and they put diseases, and I think we need to separate out the difference between disease and disorder. And then they're also asking for the name of the company that we interviewed a few weeks ago that works with corporations to get them to be more inclusive of disabled people. I'm going to meet with my work integration agent tomorrow, and I would like to show it to her then. Unfortunately, we've had like 5 different people that would fit that description. It might have been Meristem that we had on. It may have been Autism Works Now that we had on. I want to say that there were at least 2 other organizations that we had on that do exactly this. So if you can write me more information about what the person looked like or what they were wearing, I'll bet I can remember and give you more direction than that. But let's start with talking about the difference between disorder and disease. Because I think it's a common thing. They're both D words, and people use them interchangeably, but they're not the same.
They're not the same, and I think there's sometimes when there's a second language too, there's a kind of a confusion.
Yeah. Okay.
So I
Yes.
think that a lot of this is vocabulary.
Okay. So train us up.
I don't know if what I'm saying is actually technically like right on.
Okay, but
I can
in,
give my-
in your experience, your opinion.
I mean, a disease is something metabolically that has, whether it's a germ or bacteria or whatever it is, has wreaked havoc in your system, and there's biomedical tests that can confirm it's there. Something's not working or not working the right way in your body.
Yeah.
A disorder is more of symptomology.
Okay.
Something's not working the way it's supposed to be. We don't know exactly what, but here are the symptoms we see by how the person's behaving
Okay.
or what they're doing. And that's where autism falls, autism spectrum disorder. And a lot of times the disorder causes someone to be, to not function or not be able to function like everybody else functions. Yeah. So autism-related diseases are autism-related. I don't know if it's autism-related, but there's many disorders out there that might create the symptoms of autism. Okay. So then it can go through the checklist and be like, okay, there's social communication issues, they're not getting eye contact, whatever it is. And right now in the autism world, we don't have a medical test out there that just like, we can't take your blood and say, okay, yeah, you have ASD. We're not that far in technology and trying to figure that out in that world. Right now, it's pure symptomology. If you meet these criteria in these 3 sections, then yes, you might be labeled with autism spectrum disorder, and then there's different severity levels depending how much it's impacting you and how it impacts your functioning, really. Mm-hmm. Is it mild, moderate, severe? What is it that is really being measured at that point? And then it's been interesting for me because I've been in this field 25, 30 years now. And when there's diagnostic manuals that come up, and the DSM, the 4th version came out probably my 2nd year doing this. And then DSM-5, which is the next version, came out in 2013.
Yeah.
So that's 94 to 2013, and that's actually a really wide gap. And autism was one of the reasons it took so long, was because they were really trying to figure out, like, what is this?
Yeah.
And back in the manual that came out in 94, it was there was a category called pervasive developmental disorders. And autism fell under that, Rett's fell under that, childhood disintegrative disorder fell under that. And then if you just had a little bit of autism but not fully, you got your PDD NOS, not otherwise specified.
Right.
Which you have some of the characteristics but not all the characteristics.
Right.
And it was interesting to me because when DSM-5 came out in 2013, I looked at it and technology had really come a long way.
Yeah.
Because now with Rett's disorder, they actually found the genetic link.
There we go.
And even with child disintegrative disorder, they found some aspect. So there was all these, it was amazing, really.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to see, like, technology was able to be able to map genes and be able to see, like, oh, here it is, it's on this chromosome. There's actually quite a few of, like, chromosome issues, more genetic-based, where chromosomes, maybe portions of chromosomes are mutated or they've transferred differently. We have Angelman syndrome.
Yes.
Which is also a genetic chromosomal disorder, but the symptoms look a lot like autism.
Yeah.
The difference with those kids is the motor-based issues.
Yes.
So whenever we see those kids, there's difficulty a lot of times moving arms. When it's really severe, walking or standing is very difficult.
Wow.
Or maybe just like they're trying to grab something and they misgrab, like the accuracy of it. But there's a lot of more motor based. So like with Angelman's kids, I always say, okay, we have to warm up their motor first.
Right.
And before we can get them to interact with us, where they're choosing the right stimuli and things like that. So, but there's a wide range for those kids too, and that kind of matches with autism. But one thing interesting about Angelman's kids is I feel like they're very aware of you socially. Like, I think they understand, but because they have all those motor-based issues, communication is hard.
Wow.
And movement is hard, and there's just, like, all these other things. But I always say, like, they look, and you have to look at them, and they just look at you, and they're just like, I'm like, they get what I just said.
Yes.
Like, you can tell just by their facial expressions sometimes how they respond after.
Yeah.
But they meet all the criteria for ASD.
Interesting.
Because they have social communication issues. They have a lot of like the sensory issues. They have a lot of rigidity, routine based, and so a lot of times you might have autism spectrum disorder, but there's a medical reason for it. And then with a new diagnosis of autism in 2013, you could actually write that out.
Interesting.
You can say yes, you have ASD, but the reason is like this genetic, whatever the condition is.
And even though we now are able to look, and they've been saying for a long time, it's not just autism, it's autisms. Even with autism, and CARD has been very instrumental in beginning to phenotype and go, okay, there's this grouping of autism that looks like this. But part of the reason why, and help me here, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders is named the way that it is because they're an ABA company, and even though you might have Angelman's and somebody else might have autism and somebody else has Rett's or whatever, but ABA is still across the board the number one teaching methodology, because that happens to be true for people who aren't on the spectrum as well.
Yeah, I mean, ABA is really looking at the child as a whole and just saying, who are you?
Yeah.
And with CARD, we really look at people and say that, I always say the diagnosis actually doesn't matter that much to me. It's, let me see what your excesses are, let me see what your deficits are. And by looking at your deficits, what you're not getting, and by looking at your behaviors and what are the things that you're doing too much of, like, how can I address those issues?
Yeah.
Because they all have functions.
Yeah.
They all are, you're doing things for a really specific reason. And if we can figure out, what that reason is, then we can teach it.
Yeah.
And because ABA, the science of ABA, is breaking things into small pieces and then chaining them together, if you have any type of learning issue, at least this is the way I feel, is any learning issue, I can probably use ABA to try to teach you how to chain it together.
Yeah.
Break it into its simplest component, two simple components, chain it together and say, okay, now this is how you're doing it, and I'm going to give you a reinforcer so that you want to do this thing that might not make sense for you at that moment.
But eventually will.
Yeah,
And that you'll
eventually
grow
they start to
care about
see,
it.
they care about it, they like it. You know, I always say on the show that the thing I hate to do the most is to teach play to our kids with autism as a therapist, because if you have a social like disorder or just lack of social understanding,
Yeah.
if I'm throwing a ball at you, why?
Right.
It's
right,
the
right, right.
social interaction that usually makes a typical kid want to do it better.
Right.
You know, the idea of competition, can I get better at something?
Right.
You know, but when you're teaching a child that doesn't have that understanding yet, it's just a task you're doing that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And so that initial teaching play always like aggravates me as a therapist. I used to be like, oh, we're doing this again, okay. But then I would get reinforced because at a certain point they would start to like some of these toys.
Right.
They would like some of those play, and it becomes a reinforcer for them to go play. When you could say, oh, last year it was such a struggle to make you like shoot a ball in a basketball.
Right, right.
You know?
And see, what's weird for me is that with anyone other than my child, that's my favorite thing, is teaching a child. I even love, I mean, it's why we do the toy guide. I love taking a toy that everybody looks at and goes, okay, that's a toy, and showing a parent, this is how you make this toy reinforcing.
See, I like that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I love that aspect of
Yeah.
it. But it's that just initial when you first start teaching the kids to play
Yeah.
and they hate it.
Yeah, well, I think that's why I'm not good with teaching my child, because with other children, I think a lot of times, like if I meet a child that's on the spectrum, they've had a little bit of therapy, so I can jump in and I bypassed that
Yeah.
spot. And with my child, I hadn't for a long time bypassed it. You know, now it's super fun, you know, to do anything with him, but I love, that's why we do the toy reviews, which I'm like obsessed with. I can't wait until we can, on November 1st.
Oh no,
start
I
the-
love toys now, and I
Yeah.
love like getting like this would be great for this kid and trying what matches. That is so much fun. But it was just like the initial, like when they just look
Yeah.
at you like, why are you making me do
But see, as a mom, I was like that with every new program that we started. I was like, oh, please, you guys start it, and then I'll pick it up from there. Like just being able to be in the grocery store with him, because he would run in the grocery store. And the therapist went with us once, and it was like amazing, because they were like, okay, well, you're going to put your hand on the cart like this, and, you know, you're going to ride along with he walked beside me with his hand, and I was like, hand on the card? I never heard of that before. No, seriously, and they did it for him. If I had tried to teach him while I had my purse and everything, you know how that would have gone, right? But then every time we went to the store after that, I would say to him, remember, you got to put your hand on the cart, and he'd put his hand there, and away we would go, and I could get grocery shopping done. I always liked it. This is why we say, you know, get your team to work on something, and then you pick up the thread. It's easier.
And this is what I actually tell all our behavior analysts. Like I always say, hey, if there's a kid that a parent's been asking me to follow just, you know, over years, when I see them, there's a bunch of kids that I see once a year.
Yeah.
And I actually almost always say, hey, let's go do something new. Like what's, you know, like what does the parent want to do that they haven't been able to do?
Right.
Like, let's go to a new place and see how skills have generalized and what still needs to be taught. And it helps the family. It helps the parent do one more, go to one more location, get one more task done, or just enjoy them.
And now everyone who's watching is like, how do I get Evelyn Kung to come and visit my child and teach something new?
I always get your behavior analysts to do it. Generalization is part of what they do, so they should be doing it. And but that's my favorite thing. I'm like, yeah, I've seen enough therapy in the home or in the center. I'm like, let's go do something fun. Let's do something new.
Amen to that.
And some parents are like, oh, well, they don't want to because they're a little bit worried. It's a new situation.
Well, let's keep it all safe. Let's make a good impression.
Yes.
If you're here to visit, right?
And I'm like, no, we're going to something new.
Yeah.
You can choose whatever it is.
Right.
I'll be there at this time.
And if they freak out, guess what? She can handle it.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to take a break, but before we do, I want to say to our friends on YouTube, first of all, to DC the Purple Diva, hola to you back. And to Missy, we're going to deal with your question next. Missy wants to know, how do you get a child to not get stuck on a thought? My son will perseverate on a thought, usually negative, and just can't get over it. I have that problem myself sometimes. I think we all do from time to time, but not as our kids are good at this, aren't they? So we're gonna come back and take on your question next, Missy, and you guys can be writing in right now. We'll be right back after these messages.
Inclusion is everything. Feeling like we have a place where we belong, and when I say we, I'm first and foremost a mother of a child on the spectrum and gym owner and now founder of carrying this to families who need it as well.
My son is extremely hyperactive. Getting him to calm down is a very difficult task. So the idea of Rock the Spectrum Gym, where he could just go and run and play and do all these fun things without any kind of worries and just go, go, go and bring down that energy, it helps us so much at home. You know, in the home or at school, it's not acceptable, but this is the one place it is acceptable for the child to kind of be themselves and get it all out there and just really just be themselves.
It's an amazing place where my son could go and be himself. You get to meet other parents who are in the same journey as you are.
I think the most popular aspect of it is how they include all children of all types, not just only learning disabled, lower functioning, moderate functioning, high functioning, and non-disabled.
People there are so friendly. Everybody's like family. They always greet you with a smile. There's not one negative thing I could say about any of the employees. They're all absolutely amazing. I think every parent should walk in through those doors and see what an amazing gym it is.
Now a diagnosis being 1 out of 6 kids are in some way or form affected with sensory processing disorder or autism. That's why We Rock Now is on the rise. People want to be a part of it. People know that they have a community there. They know that they can learn more information about things that they don't know themselves or that they can share, build friendships, and basically get what you get in an OT facility, but it's not $150 an hour. It's $12.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here with Evelyn Kung, and she is the clinical director for CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. She's here answering your questions in real time. So I had promised before we went to break, and of course then my iPad went off. Okay, Missy has written in and said, how do you get a child to not get stuck on a thought? My son will perseverate on a thought, usually negative, and just can't get over it. And first of all, you know, how many of us, raise your hand if you ever used the word perseverate before your child was diagnosed with autism, right? And I can sense that no one is raising their hand. I remember the first time I heard and I was like, perseverate? Is that a word that people use? And now it rolls trippingly off of my tongue. Yes, welcome to this world. And because it is a thing that sometimes our kids do, and it is overwhelming because it's like you just want to like be able to lift up their hairline and click that switch off and give them a break from it because you can see them struggling with it. Yeah. But we want to break for ourselves too. Yeah. It's like, wah. But everybody's prone to this a little bit, just not with the severity that our kiddos on the spectrum are capable of. So help us. What can we do?
Like with all other challenging behaviors, and I treat this as a challenging behavior, I start from the behavioral, like really basic behavioral view of what's the function. Does every time he start on the negative, lots of people start attending to him and responding and giving him attention? We
have to pause right there. We have to go to break. We're going to be right back. It's just one of those days. We're going to get it right, and I want you to be able to hear her response. Stick with us. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ackerman. Welcome back to Talk of Facts. We hear questions all the time, and we want to give you the answers that help make your journey in autism easier and more navigatable. Less than a year ago, we interviewed the top 100 doctors in the United States working with children on the spectrum, and we asked them a question in the cloak of secrecy. What are the top 3 mistakes parents living with autism do? Number 1, and the one that makes me laugh the most, is when they use their physician as a marriage and family therapist. 1, the doctors told me it made them uncomfortable, and 2, they were highly unqualified to provide that type of advice. So the night before your physician appointment with your MAPS doctor, get together with your spouse, significant other, and write out the list of the targets in the agenda that you want to cover at the physician's appointment. get in sync, then you'll be definitely spending less time and not making that doctor so uncomfortable. Second thing that was the most common mistakes parents living with autism make is they want to go too fast. And really, you want to pace yourself in the autism journey. We all know that we want to get our kid to be the best they can be and hopefully recover from autism. And what a lot of the doctors have told me is that you want to really pace yourself. One, to let the labs be your guide. And two, work with your physician on the prioritization and the delivery of the different medical interventions. The third most common mistake they felt families made was giving up too soon. And what you need to know is they're invested. They're looking at wanting to get the best from your child. But I tell you that when I got that and consolidated the 100 interviews with these physicians, most of the doctors who brought that up had tears in their eyes. They want you to know that they're in the fight with you, and they want you to know that hope is really real. It may take hard work and it may take time, but to not give up and to stay in the game. So let TACA help you. We'll have some more TACA facts for you in the future, real questions and real answers for the autism journey.
Parent to parent, you might be asking yourself, why does my child stim? Well, first of all, let's talk about what stimming is. Stimming is a slang term for self-stimulatory behavior, which is kind of a misnomer anyway, because a lot of the times when our children engage in these kinds of behaviors, they're not to stimulate themselves. Sometimes they're to soothe themselves. So first of all, we want to get rid of the notion that it's to stimulate themselves. But they do these behaviors because there's something about it that feels good. And that's the main thing that we need to know as parents. It's not some random behavior. There's something about it that's giving the child a paycheck. And once we get an idea of what that might be, we need to find a behavior that can take that behavior's place and start to reinforce that. We want to pick something that's more socially acceptable. So if, for instance, the child is doing a lot of hand flapping because they like seeing their blurred fingers, then we can find something else for them to focus on, maybe a toy that does blurred colors, so for a period of time they'll focus on that. The main thing to remember, though, is that there is a reason for these behaviors. There's something about it that feels good to the child. And once we know that, we can begin to change it. There's a phrase that's being used in the autism community called stimming. Talk to us a little bit about what your degree is in.
City planning or urban planning.
I got it from Cal State Northridge with a degree in cinema and television arts with an emphasis in screenwriting.
And what are you interested in, Eli?
A video game internship.
Computer programming?
I'm hoping to combine entertainment and travel, my two passions.
Ooh, what kind of jobs have you worked?
Bakery inventory.
Okay, inventory.
Talk about your volunteer job.
Operation Volunteer to help the soldiers.
You volunteered to help the soldiers?
Yes. I interned in the national parks in the Santa Monica Mountains, which is very urban area. So I worked with the problems of how it's impacting the surrounding community, like the flow of traffic and the flow of people and what they could do to plan in the parking.
I've been to China, I've been all around Europe, I've been to Thailand, Japan, Australia.
You can create an app? That's impressive. Really cool thing. Can you teach other people how to make an app? If you have a choice between working or not working,
Working.
You like working.
Yes.
Why? What do you like about working?
It is fun.
I would work.
Yeah? You would choose work? Why?
Cause I want to get paid and enjoy it, and want to make sure I have enough money so I can save it.
Why do you need to have a full-time job? I mean, it's kind of like a duh thing, right?
No, obviously, so I can support myself
Right.
and hopefully a family down the line, but at least at first, myself.
I'm very dependable and always reliable and get to my job on time.
What excites you about working a job or being an intern?
learning new skills.
Yeah. What has it meant to you having this job and having the stability of a job that you've had for multiple years?
It's meant the world because I'm able to do everything, but almost everything I wanted to do because of that job.
Welcome back. Sorry about that, you guys. We're solving the problems, right? But you were answering the question about what do we do when our kids perseverate on a thought, and especially when it's a negative thought. So
I start from the beginning, work with your behavior analyst, and find out what the function of the behavior is. Because one thing about negative thoughts is there's what I've seen in the past is the first one is attention. They get lots of attention for saying negative things, and as long as they can rely on the interaction, that interaction can actually become a routine.
Okay.
I say something negative, you say this to me.
Right.
And it's very reliable, and then it can start as an attention and then turn into a routine.
Okay.
Just like a lot of things. Then let's say we're past that, and it's just like the moment I get into a negative thought, it's the inflexibility. I'm only perfect, or I'm either a success or failure, always. And that's where then I'm always trying to teach people the gray areas.
Yeah.
Because life is a continuum, it's not one side or the other. Almost everything we do has that continuum, that gray area. So then do they need vocabulary? Do they need language? I don't know what level of comprehension, language ability this person has. But I always have to say we have to teach all the gray language because a lot of times they don't know the difference between okay and perfect.
Well, and let's be clear that, there's no teenager that has all those things together either. Like, on the spectrum, not on the spectrum. I always say it's the reason why we teach Romeo and Juliet in the 9th grade. Because Romeo and Juliet were guilty of very black and white thinking. I want to be with you, I can't be with you, and so I end my life.
Yes.
and that's how it ends. And that is teenager thinking. They don't have experience to understand, I'm feeling that way right now, but I might feel differently next Wednesday when you do something that really ticks me off.
But it goes all the way to the other end. What they do have, though, is they can tell you what their favorite food is, and they can tell you what food they tolerate.
Yeah.
And what food they might eat, but they don't really like it, and the foods that they will not touch at all. And I always use food because everybody has an opinion about food.
There we go.
And I teach them, and the thing is, a lot of these kids receptively hear okay, good, great, but it's all one meaning. And that's what ends up getting them in trouble, is they start equating everything as over here or over here. It's always like, I'm perfect or I'm a failure.
But you must teach that to them.
You
can't assume that they're going to just pick it up. And because even a typical teenager in large part won't, but so especially with our kids on the spectrum, you've got to teach this.
And I would say this conversation about food, because there's just lots of variety, it can be 6 months.
Yeah.
But once they really start to understand that they love pizza and chicken is okay,
yeah,
you're getting somewhere, because okay has a different meaning now.
Yes.
And then you slowly start generalizing to other things that are more concrete, and you start having that middle ground, the neutral ground. Yeah. So just there's all these things. But the thing is, there's another issue, which is an executive function issue, which is divided attention. Once they get on something, they're stuck, and they can't switch out.
Yeah.
They can't turn it off and do the switch. So there is, like in skills, which is our curriculum, there is a lesson just to teach disengagement.
Yeah.
How do you just stop doing something? We're not even talking about getting you to go to move something that's productive. We're just saying, if you're stuck and you're perseverating, how do you just stop yourself and be able to move over?
Yeah.
Just get out of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of our kids have that issue. They're on the spectrum. They do have that part where they start on something and they just get stuck and they just have a difficulty moving out. So it's just teaching them to disengage. And then once they can disengage, then you can talk about switching your attention back and forth. Because a lot of times for us, we're perseverating on something in the back of our head, but we can turn it off, do our work, and then the minute we have free time again, we go back to that perseveration.
Right.
And that's the ability to divide your attention up. And that takes a lot of practice. When you're 10, 12, 13, it's really, really hard to do because your brain's not fully developed at that point. But hopefully by your mid-20s or 30s, you're able to shut things off and be able to, keep doing whatever you need to be doing. And then in your free time, you might go back to it.
Yeah.
And, but you're functional.
And here's the thing, that like these things are teachable, but
They're
you
very
have to
teachable.
be able to teach all these little bits that you and I wouldn't necessarily think of. That's where skills comes in. And so you can go to skillsforautism.com, do a free trial. It doesn't cost you anything for 14 days. They don't charge you till the 15th day. Try it to see. But there are all those little lessons that are in there. And once your child or teen or adult that's on the spectrum knows those things, they are actually better at coping with things than we are. Because we actually need to learn these lessons sometimes too. I can't tell you how many times that something's been happening and my son will go, hey, wait a second, is this a 2 or is this an 8? Like on the scale of 1 to 10, how upset do we really need to be about this? And, I know that you're focused on this right now, but if you take a breath, go for a walk, you'll be able to focus on, like he teaches me.
And because they learn it so concretely, I love hearing them talk about it.
I know.
Because it's so clear and organized, and you're like, okay, yeah, I never thought about it that way.
Exactly. Like whenever I'm chasing my tail, it's my kid gives me some of the best advice that I get. But part of that is because he learned these things. He didn't come out of the womb with them.
Yes.
He learned them through, and they were using skills on him. So there we go.
And there's a lot of other things. Like we have a kid right now who's 20, and he's very, same thing, perseverates a negative. So we taught him a rule, and we put it in writing that every time you think of this negative thing, you have to list 3 positive things that happened. And they're like highly engaging topics that he loves.
Okay.
So we're doing this pairing thing where it's like whenever I hit the negative, I have to, we're forcing him to think about the positive by listing and putting it visually so that he doesn't have to reach and find it. Just making it visually appear and very enticing, and he loves it already, and we don't have to teach him to love it.
Yeah.
That we're starting to make that pair, so every time you think of this negative, we're going to the positive.
There we go.
And hopefully over time it's going to work. But right now it's really funny to watch because you see the struggle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The struggle of I'm so terrible at this, or this bad thing happened, but oh look, this isn't. But it's like the back and forth. But the thing is, we're just at the beginning of teaching, and a lot of times the pairing does work. Because the thing is, you get a lot more reinforcement too if we plan it in and reinforce that positive. Plus, it's internally motivating for him to really love these subjects. And it's not 1-to-1, it's 1 to here are 3 things that you really love. Yeah. And, usually you can see some of that. And it's a coping mechanism. Yeah. We all start to spin down negative, but we can kind of move ourselves and shift and say, okay, I think I need to be more positive now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So there's a lot of things you can do.
All right, I'm going to try to get to this last question in the 8 minutes that we have left. They write in and say, this is from India again. My daughter is 10 years old with ASD. My question is, what lessons to work on to reduce anxiety regarding changes? My daughter recently has a lot of anxiety regarding every small change these days, from which restaurant to go to, the seat in the restaurant, what she wants to wear, etc. It's not that she doesn't accept it, but keeps saying this is new, and she remembers and notices every small change. Do we need to work on flexibility lessons and skills? She goes on to say, continuation from question from India, she also gets to take time to adjust when relatives come to stay with us. When we inform her that your grandfather is coming to visit, she says, bye-bye, grandfather. Thank you for answering my question. Always, you are my lifeline. We're sending you hugs. Okay, so, queen of skills. Because I don't know if you know this, but Evelyn Kung is the queen of skills, and you're the person who adds, subtracts, makes it run, and knows everything that's in there. She's the skills wizard. Wizardress. What's a female wizard?
I don't know.
I should ask my husband. He would know.
He would know.
But anyway, so which lessons? Because they use skills.
Well, there's a few things involved here. Flexibility helps, but a lot of times when kids start getting anxious, it's the same anxiety that we get as neurotypical people. When you start to anxious, you start to feel like you're out of control. Right? Anxiety builds.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty as charged, yeah.
And the thing is for us, though, is we have the power to try to gain some control.
Yeah.
Because we ask questions, we learn new information. There's a lot of things that we do so that we start feeling like we have some aspect of control.
Yeah.
So a lot of times this tends to be the kids who are very vocal, who are very aware of their situation. A lot of times I say, you know what, you need to give them some control. They're 10.
Okay.
You need to start giving her some control of things. And, it could be from what she's wearing. to what she's eating at certain meals, and then maybe not all meals because you need a balanced diet.
Right.
But a lot of times giving her some choices where she can choose. For so many of the kids, they just want some of that control in their life. When their whole life is controlled by other people, that's when the anxiety comes, because then they start focusing on all the little things.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure out what's coming next. And if they don't know how to ask questions yet, that's how a typical kid that has a lot of anxiety, they start bombarding their parents with questions. Well, when are we going? How long is he staying? Are we going to be there for long? Like, is this going to happen? Where is he going to sleep? Are we going to this restaurant? How long are we going to be there? They start, and they're trying to gain control with all their questions. So I was going to say that if she has the ability, and if you have the ability, you need to work on actually WH questions.
Yeah.
So that she can start asking.
Yeah.
And gaining some information so she can gain some control. Like the grandfather coming to visit, if it's good that you've told her and you've primed her, but maybe she has all these other questions like, how long is he staying? Are we going to do something different from our normal routine because he's here?
Right.
You know, is food going to change because maybe mom starts making food that he likes and not necessarily like the normal food they normally eat.
Right.
There's a lot of things that, change in a household, and she's trying to grasp it, trying to figure out like, I want to know what's going on. So like just teaching her to ask questions about what's going to happen makes anxiety go down quite a bit. But a lot of times just giving them more choices and more control. And as the kids get older, I always say our kids have autism, yes, but they go through, like teenagers with autism are the same as teenagers. And when they're toddlers, they're the same. They still are like, that general development is still going on. So you see a lot of the kids like going through puberty and everything else, they don't know why they're feeling a certain way, and they can't tell you how they're feeling.
Right.
And just they're hormonal or whatever it may be, it's just like things start to change and they need to have more control on their life. So yes, flexibility will help, because yes, if you feel like the function is being inflexible and they're trying to stay within their rigid routine of not wanting to go to a certain restaurant or wanting to choose what seat to sit in. But then there is the other aspect of maybe they just need more control of their life because they're being told everything on what to do.
Yeah, I think it's hard sometimes for us because we think, well, what they want control, we look at it just surface and we go, well, what they wanted control of or was where they're sitting in the restaurant. And so I could give them more control over what they wear, but they want control over the restaurant. But I have seen in myself exactly what you're talking about. I suffer from anxiety and had to go through cognitive behavioral therapy because it was to the point where I couldn't drive my car. So we're not talking the mild kind, right? And I did not understand this concept in the beginning. They were like, you feel like your life is out of control, so you're trying to take control over really ridiculous stuff.
Yes.
Like really ridiculous stuff, you guys. Like, where the sponge sits on the kitchen sink, because it can't sit there or I, completely lose my mind. And they were like, but it's not really about the sponge.
Yeah,
and I really rejected that. I was like, but it is about the sponge. But I found out through lots of therapy that it was about my child having an autism spectrum diagnosis and feeling like I can't protect him from the world.
Yeah.
That's what it was really about. And once I solved that and saw the things that I could take control over with my son, because you can't take control over everything.
Yes.
But if you look at it, and it really is that serenity prayer that they do about grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Once I understood that as an adult, then I could take control over the things that I did have control over, and it made it so that, I drive my car all the time now.
Yes.
I won't say that I'm without anxiety, that would be a lie, but I don't have a disorder at this point in time. Let's knock on some wood, because anything could happen at any minute, right? But, I just want you to realize that giving control over something that is not the thing you think is the control is very helpful.
Yeah, it really is helpful. When we start in therapy, sometimes it starts to happen. And so we start saying, okay, in this area you can choose.
Yeah.
And you see the kids, they just calm.
Yeah.
They just realize, oh, I can always choose what clothes I'm wearing.
Yes.
Or I can always choose. Like sometimes it seems ridiculous. We had a kid who wanted an allowance, and his control thing was, okay, I'm going to put a cup on the corner of my desk, and every day at Friday at 7 p.m. money needs to appear. And I'm like, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay.
Right.
that's how you want it, and it's not a big deal to anybody else, and it just makes him feel better.
Yeah.
You know, there's things that are negotiable and things that are not negotiable.
If you think about it, it's kind of like in work. Now you get direct deposit. He wanted the direct deposit. I just wanted to appear there. It makes sense to me. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but it's been a privilege to be here with all of you and a privilege to be here with you. We thank Evelyn Kung, and I'm supposed to read to you what's happening. Okay, tomorrow we have autism expert Romelia Manukal.
Leia. That's what her name's Romalea.
Romalea. Okay, thank you. Thank goodness that you knew. And then on Friday for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, we have Lemur Mom, Megan Dolan, back with us at her show, Lemur Mom. So, and my understanding is that we are going to announce on that show that we're going to be giving away a couple of tickets to her show here in Los Angeles, Lemur Mom. So definitely check that out on Friday. Until then, we will be back tomorrow, but until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.